January 1945, inside a sprawling, windowless facility in the valleys of East Tennessee, a young woman named Gladys Owens sits on a stool, her eyes locked on a dial. She doesn't know what the dial measures. She doesn't know what the machine in front of her, a hulking mass of electromagnetics known only as a Calutron, actually does. She only knows one thing. If the needle strays too far, she must turn a knob to bring it back. If she asks a question about her work, she will be interrogated by security. If she asks twice, she will be fired and placed on a train back home. Her manager walks past her station, pauses and leans in. "I can only tell you," he whispers, "that if our enemies beat us to it, God have mercy on us." Gladys nods, turns back to the dial, and keeps adjusting. She is one of 600,000 Americans working on a project so secret, even the Vice President of the United States doesn't know it exists. To understand how a young high school graduate ended up unknowingly building the fuel for an apocalypse, you have to go back to 1942, to a government desperate to win a war, and a desert that was about to be transformed. In the summer of 1942, the United States military realizes it has a terrifying problem. The world's leading physicists have convinced the federal government that a weapon of unprecedented devastation, an atomic bomb, is not only theoretically possible, but that Nazi Germany might already be building one. The theoretical physics are daunting enough, but the practical engineering problem is something else entirely. You can't just build a bomb on a university campus. You need enriched uranium and plutonium, and to get those, you need industrial infrastructure on a scale that defies imagination. You need cities that don't exist. The Army Corps of Engineers, led by General Leslie Groves, is tasked with the impossible. They need to build massive factories, reactors, and laboratories, and they need to do it in absolute hermetic secrecy. But factories don't run themselves. They require labor. They require hundreds of thousands of bodies to pour concrete, weld pipes, sweep floors, cook meals, and watch dials. The government cannot rely solely on scientists. They need a silent, obedient, and massive workforce. They need people who will follow orders without understanding the objective. This is the origin of the Manhattan Project's hidden cities. 3 locations are chosen, intentionally isolated from prying eyes. Los Alamos in the high desert of New Mexico for the scientific design, Hanford in the remote sagebrush of Washington State for plutonium production, and Oak Ridge, hidden in the Appalachian valleys of Tennessee, for uranium enrichment. Almost overnight, the government evicts farmers and homesteaders, seizing tens of thousands of acres of land. And then, the recruitment begins. The government casts a massive net across the country, targeting 2 specific demographics: young women fresh out of high school and African-American laborers desperate to escape the economic devastation of the Jim Crow South. The recruiters don't offer job descriptions. They offer train tickets, housing, and a promise that the work will help end the war. Consider Oak Ridge. In 1942, it is a quiet valley. By 1945, it is the 5th largest city in Tennessee, a sprawling metropolis of 75,000 people surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. The workers arrive by the trainload. They step off into a sea of mud, hastily constructed dormitories, and billboards that scream one constant message: "What you see here, what you do here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here." Among these arrivals are the Calutron Girls, the scientists at the University of California, Berkeley, led by Ernest Lawrence, had designed the Calutron, a mass spectrometer intended to separate the fissile isotope uranium-235 from the more common uranium-238. It is a painstaking, agonizingly slow process. Initially, the military assumes they need highly trained physicists to operate these delicate machines, but physicists are in short supply, and more importantly, physicists ask too many questions. Physicists tinker. Physicists overthink. General Groves makes a radical decision. He replaces the scientists with young, uneducated women from the surrounding rural counties. Women like Gladys Owens and Ruth Huddleston. They are brought into the Y-12 plant, a facility so massive it's silver wiring, borrowed from the US Treasury because copper was in short supply, weighs 14,000 tons. The women are given a simple set of instructions. Watch the meters, adjust the dials, keep the needle in the center. Do not ask why. Do not talk to the woman sitting next to you about your dials. And then something strange happens. The uneducated teenage girls start outperforming the PhDs. The scientists, it turns out, couldn't resist trying to optimize the machines, leading to fluctuations and inefficiencies. The women just followed the rules. They treated the Calutrons like delicate sewing machines, developing an intuitive feel for the electromagnetic pulses. They are unknowingly separating the atoms that will form the core of the little boy bomb, and they are doing it better than the men who invented the physics. But while the Calutron Girls sit in their clean, humming control rooms, another reality is unfolding in the mud and dust outside. The secret cities require monumental physical labor to build and maintain, and for that, the government turns to African American workers. Thousands of black men and women travel to Oak Ridge and Hanford, drawn by the promise of federal wages and a way out of the deeply segregated South. Executive Order 8802, signed by President Roosevelt in 1941, officially bans racial discrimination in the defense industry. But the reality on the ground in these hidden cities is a brutal contradiction. The government needs black labor, but it refuses to integrate the workforce, fearing unrest from white workers. At Oak Ridge, the segregation is absolute and unapologetically cruel. While white workers, including the Calutron Girls, are housed in relatively comfortable dormitories or houses, black workers are confined to a cramped, fenced-in area known as the hutment area. The hutments are nothing more than plywood shacks 16 feet by 16 feet with no plumbing, no insulation, and a single potbelly stove in the center. 4 to 6 workers are crammed into each hut. In the brutal Tennessee winters, they freeze. In the sweltering summers, they suffocate. But for many, the economics outweigh the indignity. Catty Strickland, an African-American woman from the Deep South, arrives in Oak Ridge to work as a janitor. She cleans the top-secret K-25 gaseous diffusion plant. She sweeps the floors around machines she is forbidden to look at closely. Decades later, she would reflect on the experience with a heartbreaking pragmatism. "I thought I was rich," she said. "All that money. We paid $1.50 for a week for a bed, rent, and get a change twice a week. We were not making that much money, but more than I had ever seen." Think about that. The United States government is funding the most advanced scientific endeavor in human history, building a weapon that will alter the trajectory of the human species, and it is doing so on the backs of laborers who feel wealthy, earning a few dollars a week sweeping radioactive dust. At Hanford, in Washington state, the situation is similarly intense. The site is a bleak, unforgiving landscape. The government brings in massive crews to build the B reactor, the world's first full-scale plutonium production reactor. Black workers make up a significant portion of the construction crews. They lay the bricks, pour the concrete, and dig the trenches. Yet, at Hanford, a peculiar bureaucratic calculus is applied. Project managers artificially cap the black population at around 10 to 20% of the total workforce. The official reasoning? They want to prevent racial friction. In reality, they want to maintain a precise balance of power, ensuring that the men doing the hardest labor have no collective leverage. The tension in these cities is a living, breathing thing. It isn't just the racial segregation, it is the absolute crushing weight of the secrecy. Compartmentalization is the religion of the Manhattan Project. General Groves insists that no one, absolutely no one, should know anything beyond what is strictly necessary to turn their specific dial, sweep their specific floor, or pour their specific concrete. This creates a psychological pressure cooker. You have tens of thousands of people working around the clock, subjected to constant surveillance, lie detector tests, and sudden interrogations. Informants are everywhere. If you drop a hint at a bar that you saw a strange chemical delivery, you could be gone the next morning. Workers invent their own folklore to cope. Some whisper that they are building a new type of synthetic rubber. Others guess they are making nylon for parachutes, or a revolutionary type of paint. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. You are a part of the greatest industrial mobilization in history, and your daily reality is terrifyingly mundane. But as 1944 bleeds into 1945, the mundane begins to fracture. The workers start noticing things. At Hanford, construction workers watch as massive amounts of water are pumped from the Columbia River, run through the mysterious windowless reactor buildings, and then pumped back out, noticeably warmer. What kind of factory takes in nothing but water and electricity and seemingly produces nothing? At Oak Ridge, the Calutron Girls notice that despite the massive scale of the Y12 and K25 plants, the actual output is invisible. Thousands of train cars of raw materials go in. Nothing ever comes out, or at least nothing they can see. In reality, the output of months of labor by tens of thousands of people is measured in grams. Grams of a fine metallic powder carried by couriers in ordinary briefcases on commercial trains to New Mexico. The physical toll of this blind labor is high. Workers in the chemical separation plants are exposed to toxic solvents and, unknowingly, low levels of radiation. They are given regular medical exams, but they are never told what the doctors are looking for. They are asked to provide urine samples, but they are never given the results. The government views the workers not just as laborers, but as biological data points in a grand, terrifying experiment. In Los Alamos, where the scientists are actually designing the bomb, there is another hidden workforce. The local Hispanic population and members of the nearby San Ildefonso Pueblo are brought in as maids, cooks, and technicians. They clean the houses of J. Robert Oppenheimer and Richard Feynman. They watch the world's most brilliant minds scribbling equations on blackboards, completely unaware that these equations describe the destruction of cities. They are the invisible scaffolding holding up the genius. The conflict reaches its peak in the summer of 1945. Germany has surrendered, but the war in the Pacific rages on in a bloodbath of unimaginable proportions. The urgency at the secret cities reaches a fever pitch. The dials must be watched closer. The concrete must be poured faster. The workers are pushed to the brink of exhaustion, driven by a patriotic duty to a goal they cannot name. And then, the veil is ripped away. August 6th, 1945. The Enola Gay drops a uranium bomb codenamed Little Boy on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, a plutonium bomb codenamed Fat Man is dropped on Nagasaki. In Oak Ridge, Hanford, and Los Alamos, the news comes over the radio and in screaming newspaper headlines. The announcement from President Harry Truman echoes through the cafeterias and dormitories. "It is an atomic bomb," Truman declares. "It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe." For the scientists, the moment is a complex collision of triumph, relief, and creeping horror. But for the hidden workers, for Gladys Owens, for Ruth Huddleston, for Kathy Strickland, the revelation is entirely different. It is a shock of profound, disorienting magnitude. Imagine spending 2 years of your life turning a knob, believing you were perhaps making a new kind of airplane fuel. And then, on a Tuesday morning, a newspaper tells you that your knob turning just vaporized a city of 300,000 people. The reactions are violently mixed. Some workers erupt into cheers, crying and hugging, believing that their blind obedience has finally ended the war and will bring their brothers and husbands home from the Pacific. Others fall into a stunned, sickening silence. They look at their hands, at the dust on their clothes, and realize the true weight of what they have been touching. The government, in a rare moment of public relations, issues pins to the workers. A simple silver A for atomic, a physical token of their complicity and their contribution. It is a strange, inadequate compensation for holding the secrets of the universe in the dark. So, what actually happened to this hidden army? They didn't get paraded through the streets of New York. They didn't get their names in the history books alongside Oppenheimer, Fermi, and Lawrence. The war ends. The massive workforce is rapidly demobilized. The secret cities, no longer quite so secret, shrink. Many of the women are let go, their jobs taken by returning soldiers. The African-American workers who built the reactors and swept the radioactive floors are largely left to fend for themselves, returning to a country that still refuses to let them drink from the same water fountains as the men whose equations they helped realize. The Manhattan Project is hailed as the ultimate triumph of American scientific genius. The narrative is crystallized. Brilliant men in a desert laboratory unlocked the atom and saved the world. It is a clean, compelling story, but it is a lie of omission. The bomb was not just built by equations. It was built by the calloused hands of thousands of black men pouring concrete in the Washington desert. It was built by the numb fingers of teenage girls in Tennessee, watching dials for 8 hours a day in windowless rooms. It was built by a massive, disposable underclass who were deemed necessary enough to handle the materials, but not intelligent or trustworthy enough to know what those materials were. They were the ultimate cogs in the ultimate machine. The government realized a terrifying truth about industrial warfare. You don't need everyone to understand the weapon. You just need them to follow the procedure. Compartmentalization doesn't just protect secrets from the enemy, it protects the workers from their own conscience. Today, the facilities at Oak Ridge and Hanford are largely historical sites or undergoing massive environmental cleanups. The Calutrons are silent. The hutments are long gone, replaced by grass and memory. The thousands of hidden workers have mostly passed away, carrying the strange, silent burden of their contribution with them. The atomic age was birthed in secrecy, not just from the Axis powers, but from the very people who gave it life. The fastest way to build an empire of destruction, it turns out, is to convince the builders they are making nothing at all. As we look back at the dawn of the nuclear era, the question isn't just how we unlocked the power of the atom. The question is how easily we convinced hundreds of thousands of people to build a machine of death simply by refusing to tell them its name. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again,